How you doing today, Mr. Mayor Brett Smiley? Welcome to the Netwrk podcast. Just in case you didn't know, obviously you don't know, I was the one who reached out to you to try to get you on the platform. We're gonna make this an easy interview today. The conversation, try and make it as smooth as possible. And I think one of the things that we'd like to try to do is try to get your viewpoint of what's going on in the economy as well as the housing market. So with that being said, since you have a strong hard stop, let's get right to it. And I'm Sadiq once again, and let's get right to it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Definitely appreciate that. One of the things that we want to discuss about was the affordable housing initiatives that you have going on right now. Um, by the end of August, the city will have committed $55.6 million to affordable housing construction and preservation through the Providence Housing Trust, resulting in 1,500 new or preserved units, right? Given that nearly all of the current housing stock is in use, how do you plan to expand living spaces across neighborhoods and ensure housing options are available at every price point? And what measures are being taken to support both tenants and landlords in the expanding market?
Yeah, you're right. We need to be doing housing at every price point. And our affordable housing challenges in the city, first of all, it's one of the biggest challenges we're facing. But secondly, it is primarily a supply problem. We simply don't have enough apartments. And so the most important thing we can do is to continue to develop new housing. And so we're taking as many steps as we can to make that happen. In addition to the funding that you mentioned, where we're able to provide additional subsidy to affordable housing proposals, we're also making it easier to build across the city through streamlined regulations, but then there's a dramatic change coming to our zoning regulations. We're in the middle of the city's comprehensive plan process. We expect that to be passed by the end of this year. And there is nearly across the board upzoning happening around the city, which means in places where you used to only be able to build a 2-family, you'll be able to build a 3 or 4-family. In places that are on a major commercial corridor or near transit, you'll be able to build even bigger. And so what we're trying to do is attack this problem from all different areas. Subsidize permanently affordable projects, make it faster and less expensive to build by reducing regulation and streamlining the approval process, and then hopefully encourage bigger scale by upzoning. So encouraging builders and developers of all sizes to build something a little bit bigger to bring in 1 or 2 additional units.
That's good. I think a lot of investors are going to be happy to hear that.
I would hope so. I mean, Providence is an attractive place to invest. We have nearly 95% of our apartments are occupied, which means there is excess demand. If you build it, you will be able to rent it. And my administration is one that is welcoming to new growth and new development. And we're here to try to help the project get done as opposed to throw up hurdles to try to slow things down.
No. What would you say to constituents that think that affordable housing diminishes their home value?
You know, I'm so happy that we really don't face that question very often. I think in Providence, maybe different than the suburbs or some other places, we don't hear that very often. And I think the reason why is because we have so many really professional community development corporations and affordable housing developers that have been working in the city for years. And so our neighbors know what affordable housing looks like in our city. And honestly, it looks like market rate housing. You know, it's just as nice. It's just as nice. The properties are just as well maintained. And so we don't face a lot of pushback on that. The place where we find a little bit of pushback is around scale. And certain neighbors and neighborhoods that don't want to see bigger buildings next to their home is where we have a little bit of tension. But with affordable housing itself, we really don't get a lot of conflict, which is great. And I feel fortunate to be in a community that recognizes that everyone needs to be able to afford a place to call home, and grateful to the developers that have put good product into the marketplace for years now, so that apprehension of what it might look like or what it might live like has really gone away.
I think one of the things, as you're talking about affordable housing, you're talking about community development and so forth. One of the questions that I receive a lot from a lot of regular, everyday tenants, homeowners, and so forth. One of the things I know is that Rhode Islanders are being priced out of the market because of out-of-towners, people buying into the community, and so forth. And obviously, it's boosting up the prices, it's increasing the rent. All these play a major factor into it. Um, my question to you, are there any programs that your team and yourself are coming up with to support Rhode Island residents so they can have an opportunity of that American dream and that opportunity to build wealth for themselves and their families as well?
Yeah, the primary home ownership incentive program has come through Rhode Island Housing and with state funding. Um, there's city resources can only go so far. We have primarily focused our resources around rental affordability. But home ownership is an important piece of the puzzle. And as you rightly point out, it's how most families build wealth. It's the single largest asset for most households is their home. And we do want families and individuals to be able to buy a home here in Providence. So we've been advocating at the State House for additional funding for down payment assistance and other home buying assistance, but those are state funds and not city funds. The other way in which we have tried to influence this is in our zoning and planning process, and then through the 195 Commission, which is a special economic development zone here in the city, we've been trying to push people on, what you will know the term of product mix, and to make sure that we're building the right product mix, which includes some home ownership, whether those be townhomes and condos in addition to just apartments. And then when it comes to apartments, we want to make sure that we're creating homes that families can live in and not just, for example, student housing. And I don't have any problem with student housing, but that can't be the only thing that gets built. And particularly now in the new economy post-pandemic, where we've got a lot of people who are working from home, a studio apartment just isn't going to cut it. When your home is also your office, you're not living in a studio. And so, for many years, the only projects that were getting built here were student-focused apartments, not student-restricted, but student-focused, and that meant that they were building primarily studios, or like 3 or 4 bedrooms with a small shared common space, and we knew that they were going to rent by the room. And so the way in which you design and lay out an apartment or a condo for a family or for a young professional is very different than what you do for student housing. And so we have some levers that we can pull in that respect from zoning and planning approvals.
Nice. With fiscal year 2025 and the budget that you guys are allocating, which is about nearly $2.7 million to the newly established Housing and Human Service Department, which focuses on housing strategy and behavioral health. And I think this is very important for what's going on right now in our economy. How do you guys envision the department transforming the city's approach to affordable housing and residents' well-being? And what specific outcomes are you guys aiming for the near future?
So we had historically in the city had a community development department that was a part of the planning department. They would oversee our community development block grants, CDBG funding, and our housing investments. And then we had what was called the Office of Healthy Communities, and they did things like services for the unhoused and addiction recovery and other human services. And we realized that there needed to be a much closer coordination and better integration. And so we took community development and human services, put them together. We actually ended up saving taxpayer money by being able to eliminate a position or two and have better coordination. So we're able to do more with less tax dollars invested. And what that has helped us do is when we think about subsidies or CDBG investments that we're making, everything from Crossroads, the state's primary provider of homeless services, to some of our smaller CDCs, we can then also better coordinate and plan for the other resources that we have, because we know that particularly with respect to housing for those who are most at the margins, who are either homeless or at the risk of being homeless, they need more than just an apartment. They need a home and services in order to get a stable foundation and secure long-term housing. In many cases, they need employment services, they might need childcare services, they might need either physical or mental health care services, and our goal is not just to provide temporary shelter for those who are unhoused, but to actually put them on a path to stability and stable housing. But we know that it takes more than just a key to your own apartment for some people in order to get on that path. And so by bringing these two departments together, we're able to bring those services together and hopefully have a more sustainable path forward for our neighbors who are couch hopping, living in their car, or in encampments in our city.
Right. So on that, pretty much on that same topic and kind of pulling in the first two questions, your administration has significant improvements around developers and investors because of the challenges that we face with high permit fees, lengthy plan reviews, rising property taxes, which could lead to increased rents, and that burden is really on the consumer at that point once they're in. How do you plan to assist both landlords and tenants in resolving the issues and promoting a more a more friendly environment to develop these properties and sort of bridge that gap between sort of that beef that tenants and landlords have? We hear all the time. There's definitely like, some East Coast, West Coast rivalry type thing going on.
So on the making it easier to either develop or renovate properties, we've made meaningful changes in our Department of Inspections and Standards, which is our building department. I brought in a new director when I got elected a year and a half ago. We're putting more and more services online. We're reforming the way in which we charge for permits, which will save many developers money. The bigger projects, people are going to start to pay for the services that they consume as opposed to a flat permit fee, which has been sometimes penalized small projects or shifted the burden to small projects. When it comes to the tax burden question, first of all, I haven't been afraid to try to explain to residents, the city council, my view on these taxes, which is politically it's very popular to cut homeowners' taxes because they're a clear voting constituency, and it has been popular to stick it to commercial landlords because they're just a popular punching bag. But the reality is, when you raise taxes on an apartment building, it's not the landlord who's paying, it's the tenants who are paying. If you raise that tax bill, that means it's going to be in the rents next year, and the tenant's voice has not been heard in that way. And so I've tried to provide some public leadership in explaining how that's going to work. And as a result, last year in my first budget, we actually cut commercial taxes for the first time in years, and to provide some modest relief. This year we were able to hold taxes flat, which isn't great relief, but when you realize that the cost of everything else is going up, the fact that we didn't have to raise taxes is a win. And then finally, we're trying to be innovative. This question around tension, right? We're trying to be innovative to understand that in many cases there is in fact a win-win. We have a new program, for example, for owners of multifamily properties that have been cited for code violations or building violations. And what we do for qualifying properties is we provide a forgivable loan to make the repairs necessary to bring your house back up to code. And then over 5 years, so long as you continue to hold the property, that loan is forgiven. And the way in which we make the loan is using the money that we charge in the penalties. So while nobody likes to be penalized, those penalties are being reinvested to bring a property back into compliance. And so long as you continue to hold it, we don't want to incentivize people to buy bad properties, take advantage of this program, and then sell them for a profit. That's why we ask that you hold the property for 5 years. We had a gentleman that I met on the south side in Elmwood who was a single dad. He owned a 3-family, and just like paying for his kids' education and life caused his property, he just didn't have money to keep it up. And so he was cited for a variety of violations, and none of them were catastrophic, but it was a nuisance property, and he was doing the best he could. We were able to provide him this loan. He repaired his building. He's going to live there for the next 5 years and rent out the top 2 floors, and the loan will be forgiven. By the way, win-win. Win for his tenants, win for the landlord, win for the city. We don't really make that much money off these violations. It's intended to change behavior. And here's a way in which we can have an improved property, and I don't know how many tenants live upstairs, but for half dozen people are living in a better home as a result of it. So we try to look for innovative solutions like that recognize that sometimes the landlord and the tenant are actually on the same page and both want the same outcome. And that's how we try to bridge that East Coast, West Coast divide there. Yeah.
How do you get that word out though? How do people know? I mean, here, obviously.
We did we actually did a press conference at that homeowner's house. But that's a partnership through the Providence Revolving Fund. So they help administer the program for us. For any of your listeners, if they want to learn more, they should go to the Providence Revolving Fund to find out more about it. They can also call the city's building department. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I want to have a quick discussion on is the term around shrinkflation, right? Which is something that I've been listening to and hearing a lot more lately, right? And obviously we hear that in the food retail space, but you can also tie that into real estate, right? Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that I've been noticing is that a lot of these developers, they want to build big, right? But they want to also shrink space, square footage, and still charge tenants a higher premium.
Right.
What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is what makes me feel like an old man. It's like, I remember as I grew up in Chicago, my first apartment was a studio. It was $500 a month. But the studio was like 600-700 square feet. And I'm looking at some of the units that are being put online, like 250, 300 square feet, these micro lofts. And I'm thinking, oh my God. And then they're going to be $1,000, right? And so, it's a dilemma, and it's something that we're trying to find the right balance on. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. It's a question of balance. The reality is there is a market for those. We had a proposal for a property that included some of these that was adjacent to one of our hospitals, and you think it was sort of easy for me to perceive that maybe a medical student or a CNA or someone that worked in a hospital might just be looking for the most affordable unit that they could find, that they could walk to work. But we can't have just that. And so this gets back to the topic around product mix and unit mix. The balance matters, because what we want is a city. We don't want to be just a college town. We don't want to be just a retirement community. Like, we want a mix of everything here. We want young professionals, we want mid-career professionals, we want families. And so we have to have a product mix that serves all of them. And we're doing our best to try to navigate to find that balance. It's a little bit of, I don't want to say trial and error, but it's an evolving quest to find that balance, because I think you're right. It is, I understand, and I don't begrudge developers for trying to find the most profitable mix, but it's also the government's job sometimes to say no.
Gotcha.
Okay, I mean, sometimes you just got to say no. I have a question, being the fact that we're both realtors, and we know that your husband, Jim Durantis, is also a realtor.
A big-time
realtor. Yeah, he's he's award-winning
Correct.
realtor, actually. I'm sure you've learned a thing or two about real estate, because I know I definitely do a lot of yapping at home with my own husband.
Yeah.
So how, if at all, does your proximity to real estate affect the decisions and the way that you put these committees in place, and just some of the conversations you have around real estate and development in particular?
It's been great. It's been great to have a market perspective. I've been in government and politics for a long time. I very much have a government perspective on most things. And so it's been helpful to bring in the perspective of professionals who are trying to do this every day, to understand a little bit better from a different point of view where the pain points are. Everything from just sort of like nuisance pain points to actual real market problems. And they're both relevant, and they both should be solved. And so it's been helpful it's particularly, I mentioned that we're making a lot of process changes at the Department of Inspections and Standards. A lot of that's informed by what I've heard at home, and in terms of how difficult it is sometimes to get a zoning certificate, or to do business with the city. And so I think it has helped a great deal. I understand that we have different jobs, and so there are sometimes that he and I don't agree, because just like I don't necessarily have that perspective, he doesn't have a government perspective, and just like you all, it's like you're trying to do the best by your client every day. My client is all of the, all the residents of Providence. Right, it's like all the residents of Providence, and when you do government regulations, unfortunately, sometimes you're trying to protect against the worst actor, as opposed, so there are conversations sometimes that say like, oh, but he's going to do the right thing, and it's like, well, he might, whoever your client might be trying to do the right thing, but the reality is that we have to make policy that applies to all of them, and some people aren't trying to do the right thing, and so that's where the tension comes in. But it has been very helpful to have that real perspective, and as you say, like he does a lot of work in the city, and so I get a broad perspective of. He works in nearly every neighborhood in Providence, and so it's been good to have that perspective.
It's good because I was going to ask him to see if there was any disagreement.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
With
Of course.
Ms. Smiley, the fiscal year 2025 budget totaled nearly $600 million, and manages to maintain financial stability without increasing taxes or relying on any federal funds. Can you elaborate to us on the challenges and decision-making processes involved in balancing such diverse priorities within the budget, particularly the largest investment when it comes to Providence schools in 7 years and the significant allocation towards climate change and mitigation?
Yeah, so I mean, every year the city, and this isn't unique to me, this is the past, I don't know, all the mayors that are hanging on the wall in this building. The city of Providence is always a tight budget. It's primarily driven by the proliferation of tax-exempt property in the city. About 80% of the revenue for the city comes from property taxes, but almost half of the city is property tax exempt because of the colleges and the universities. And so we always have a tight budget. And so you're always making hard choices. You can't do everything you want to do. What I have tried to do is both maintain the projects that matter, the programs that matter, to understand the burden on property taxpayers, to try to not shift the burden onto them, but to still be able to provide a few focus areas. And that focus area thing is I think important, which is you can't do everything, so you have to channel your energy, and in this case, new resources. You pointed out that this year we focus on two things, and then there's a third, which is an overarching goal of my administration. So our schools need more support, and so we were excited to be able to give them a meaningful increase in their funding. Sadly, we've got more students than ever that are needing special educational assistance due to IEPs. During the pandemic, the school department got behind on assessing some students, and so there's work that needs to happen. Additionally, our student body is changing. Our learners require multilingual instruction. They require other social emotional supports. That all costs money. So we prioritize that. Two, this budget was very much focused on resiliency. Last summer, I'm sure you recall, it rained something like 14 out of 18 weeks, right? And we saw catastrophic flooding throughout the city. We spent more money on flooding than we spent on snow removal. We canceled school in September for the first time because of high heat. We've had high heat days in June before, but never in September. Like, things are changing. And so we're making meaningful investments there. And then finally, it was last year's budget and this year's budget. I'll tell you it'll be next year's budget and the budget after that, because it's what I care about, which is continuing to increase the quality of life here in the city. I think the reason that people choose Providence is we've got all of the arts and culture and diversity of a big city, but it's just an easier, more pleasant place to live. This is why people leave Boston and New York to come here. And so we need to preserve that quality of life. That's everything from fixing streets and sidewalks to ensuring that it's a safe city. And so those investments were integrated into the budget as well. And those will always be one of my priorities.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Providence definitely has that city but small town
Yeah,
feel.
it's
Everybody
great.
knows everyone.
It's great.
Go somewhere and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I know so and so. Like the degrees of separation are not 5 in Rhode Island and Providence in particular. It's like 2.
exactly. Like
Rhode Island's more so like you stated in one of your interviews that I read online. It's more of a melting pot.
That's
Yeah,
right.
You know?
definitely.
So we have a quick game that we'd like to
right.
play with our guest that comes onto the platform. It's simple. All we just do, we give you 5 individuals or 5 things, and you just have to give us one word response regarding those things or people.
Got it.
First thing, yeah.
I'm ready.
I'll start. All right. Providence Public Schools.
Potential.
Nice.
Oh, that's a good one. Climate change mitigation.
Crisis.
Okay.
Housing and Human Services Department.
Growing.
Growing. Affordable housing.
Expanding.
Development challenges.
Streamline.
I thought he was going to stutter right there.
I thought you were going to cheat and do 2 words on that one.
Throw it by real quick.
Those are some good answers.
No, those
yeah.
were really, really great answers. Listen, Mayor Brett Smiley, it was definitely a pleasure bringing you onto our platform. You know,
Thank you so much.
Especially given that people want to hear what you have to say in regards to what's going on in the economy and what you're doing to provide change or to assist the people in our community. I think that's one of the biggest things that people want to hear. So we're definitely grateful that you came onto our platform and sharing your knowledge and your insight, as well as your initiatives that you have planned going on and so forth. So.
Yeah, I appreciate it. The thing that I got out of this was balance.
Yeah.
It just seems like you have a good grip on trying to figure out some balance in the
is
city.
Everything.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Balance is everything.
So if
Right.
any of Providence residents have any questions or they want to get in touch with your staff, what's the best way
The
to
front
do it?
door to everything is 311. So if you call 311, like 911, so just call 311. There's a PVD 311 app, and there's also an office on the first floor here in City Hall. And 311 is the front door to everything. They can connect you to that housing repair program that I mentioned. They can connect you to the building department. They can connect you to the planning department if you want to understand how your neighborhood zoning might be changing in the new plan. They can connect you to the mayor's office itself. They can connect you everywhere. That's your front door, 311.
Amazing. All right.
You guys know what it is. It's your boy Sadiq
And Angela?
and Angela Montero. Listen, if you guys love what you guys heard from Mayor Brett Smiley today, please, as well as actually just follow, share, like, comment, the whole 9 yards. We totally appreciate the love, the support, the engagement, and we just want you guys to continue doing that and just share and show some love. Until next time, catch you guys on the flip side. Love.
Peace.